Judge mocked single dad veterans' medals as fake, then a general entered and stopped everything. The courtroom buzzed with quiet whispers as Daniel Cole, a single father and war veteran, stood at the defendant's table, his uniform neatly pressed, his medals shining under the harsh fluorescent light. Across from him sat his ex-wife's lawyer, a man with an expensive suit and a smug grin. And at the bench, Judge Rebecca Harlow, known for her cold tone and quick judgments, adjusted her glasses with disdain. She looked Daniel up and down, her lips curling. "Mr. Cole," she began sharply, "you stand here claiming to be a decorated soldier, yet your records show no active status. Are you sure these medals aren't replicas?" Laughter rippled through the courtroom. Daniel didn't flinch. His jaw tightened, but his eyes remained calm. "They're not replicas, Your Honor. They were earned in combat." The judge scoffed. "Combat? You mean to tell me you, a diner cook, fought in war zones?" Daniel nodded slowly. "Yes, ma'am. Iraq. Afghanistan. Somalia." She leaned back, unimpressed. "Anyone can buy medals online, Mr. Cole. Let's stick to reality. Act 1, The Mockery." Daniel's daughter, Lily, sat in the back, tears filling her eyes. She knew every scar on her father's body, every story of courage he'd whispered before bedtime. The opposing lawyer smirked. "Your Honor, this man is clearly exaggerating his service record to gain sympathy for custody." The judge nodded. "I agree. Mr. Cole, if you can't provide proof of your service, I'll have to dismiss your claims of veteran status. That would seriously affect your credibility as a parent." Daniel stayed silent. Then he quietly reached into his coat and placed a small, old metal case on the bench. Inside, the silver star, bronze star, and a folded photo, his entire past in one small box. "These were given to me by my commanding officer," he said softly. "The only proof I ever needed was the memory of those who didn't come home." The judge's expression hardened. "Enough of the theatrics, Mr. Cole. If your so-called commanding officer were here, I'm sure he'd tell a very different story." Act 2, The Entrance. At that exact moment, the courtroom doors swung open. A man in full military dress uniform stepped in, his medals reflecting the light, his presence commanding silence. Every head turned. The bailiff stiffened. The man spoke, his voice deep and steady. "Actually, Your Honor, I would tell the exact same story." The courtroom froze. Judge Harlow blinked in shock. "And who might you be?" The man stepped forward, saluting Daniel. "General Nathan Briggs, United States Army." This man, Sergeant First Class Daniel Cole, served under my command for 6 years. He's one of the finest soldiers I've ever led. A murmur swept the room. The general continued, his voice rising. "Those medals aren't fake. They're soaked in blood, sweat, and sacrifice. You mock them, you mock every soldier who's ever stood on the front line." The judge's face turned pale. I wasn't aware." "Of course you weren't," the general interrupted coldly. "You didn't ask." Act 3, The Truth. The general walked over to Daniel, placing a firm hand on his shoulder. "You saved 5 men that day in Kandahar. Including me. You never took credit. You just went home to raise your little girl." Tears filled Daniel's eyes. He looked down, whispering, "Just did my job, sir." The general faced the judge. "Your Honor, this man deserves respect, not ridicule." The courtroom was dead silent. Even the opposing attorney lowered his gaze. Judge Harlow straightened her robe. "Mr. Cole, I owe you an apology. This court recognizes your honorable service. Custody is awarded to you immediately." Daniel's daughter burst into tears, running to hug her father. "Daddy! We can go home." He knelt down, hugging her tightly. "We were always home, sweetheart." The general smiled faintly and saluted him. "Carry on, soldier." Epilogue. As the general left the courtroom, Daniel stood tall once again, not as a defendant, but as a father, a Marine, and a man whose honor could never be bought or broken. The judge watched him go, her voice trembling. Daniel placed his medals back in their box, kissed his daughter's forehead, and whispered, For them, for you, and for every man who never came home. Dizzy moral. Never judge a soldier by his silence, his medals speak louder than words. United States Red Heart Fire. Perfect fire. Here's your 10 extended paragraphs, almost equals 500 words, continuation for the story. Judge mocks single dad veterans' medals as fake, then a general entered and stopped everything. Backhand index pointing down. After the courtroom emptied, Daniel stood alone in the hallway, medals still clutched in his trembling hand. He wasn't shaking from fear anymore, but from relief. Years of humiliation, quiet endurance, and sacrifice had finally been seen for what they were, honor. The general walked out beside him, removing his hat. "You did good in there, son," he said softly. "You didn't need me to fight your battle, but I couldn't stay silent when I heard what they did to you." Daniel nodded. "Thank you, sir. I thought the world forgot about men like us." The general smiled faintly. "The world forgets. But real soldiers don't." They stood quietly for a moment. The hallway echoed with distant footsteps. Daniel looked down at his little girl, who was holding his hand tightly. "Let's go home, Lily." As they walked out into the sunlight, reporters swarmed outside, cameras flashing. For once, Daniel didn't shy away. One of them asked, "Mr. Cole, how does it feel to be vindicated?" Daniel looked straight at the camera. "It feels good. But I didn't do it for myself. I did it for every father who's fighting for his child and every soldier who's been forgotten." That evening, Daniel and Lily stopped by their small diner, the one he'd built after leaving the army. The lights flickered warmly, the smell of grilled food filling the air. The same medals that had been mocked now hung proudly on the wall behind the counter. Customers greeted him like an old friend. Some had seen the news, others just felt the quiet pride in his presence. An older man approached him, a Vietnam veteran, and placed his hand on Daniel's shoulder. "You reminded them what honor looks like, son," he said, eyes misty. Later, as Lily dozed off on a bench, Daniel sat alone, staring at the stars through the diner window. He thought about the men he'd lost, about how many times he'd almost given up. But tonight, he felt peace. Suddenly, the diner door creaked open. The general stepped in again, this time without his uniform. "I figured you could use a hand running this place," he said with a grin. Daniel chuckled. "You cooking now, sir?" "Only if you promise to wash the dishes," the general replied. They both laughed, two soldiers, two generations, sharing quiet pride in a world that often forgot what service meant. As the night grew darker, Daniel whispered to his daughter, "People may doubt you, Lily. They may call your truth a lie. But if you stand tall and fight with honor, the truth will always walk in that door even if it takes a general to open it." And somewhere deep inside him, the Marine stood tall again, not for medals, not for applause, but for legacy.